Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Yom Jumu'ah. Jumu'ah should begin by making intentions at Maghrib of Thursday. So Thursday at Maghrib, after Maghrib, one should make his intention to perform the Jumu'ah prayer. Now Jumu'ah is fara'ain for men, Muslim men, and this wajib is that one is performing it with all of the conditions being met. So depending on the school of thought, depends on your fiqh, Jumu'ah, the time for performing ghusl and all of these things, it may vary from school to school. My teaching is Maliki fiqh, but there's other aspects that are considered sound, other ways and methods that are sound. But I want to primarily just focus on some of the basic general beliefs or principles about what one should be following as a Muslim. So, as we know, Jumu'ah prayer is something that's required, is considered obligatory. Not considered, it is obligatory for Muslim men. And this man is classified as the one that reaches the age of maturity, or mukallaf. So once a person reaches the age of maturity or mukallaf, where the rules of the religion becomes binding, this is when Jumu'ah will be binding as well. So what we have is the making the intentions after Maghrib prayer on Thursday, and after this one should perform the ghusl, and this is the full body bathe that one normally does for other type of reasons as it relates to major janaba or ritual impurity. But in this case, for the Maliki, the ghusl in this category of Jumu'ah is considered a sunnah mu'akkada. A sunnah mu'akkada, which is an emphatic sunnah, which is not the same as far, but it carries similar weight. For instance, for the Hanafis, the term wajib and the term fard has a difference. So wajib is a little less, and then what is fard? For the Malikis, wajib and fard, the terms translates as obligatory, but we look at them as synonymous. The term fard and the term wajib is considered synonymous in the Maliki fiqh. So after you have those two terms, the fard and the wajib, that are considered in this category, you have fard, which is the Jumu'ah itself. The ghusl, the bath, is sunnah mu'akkada. So it's highly recommended that this is performed. After this is performed, one has to make the intention to do the sunan fitra, or you can actually do it before, but you should do it with the intention to get more barakat or reward for it. So you do your sunan fitra. Normally you would do it, this is a good time to do it before Jumu'ah, and this is where you clip your nails, you shave, you do all of the various shavings, and you do that before Jumu'ah as well. For the Maliki, as far as the ghusl is concerned, you perform the ghusl just before the Jumu'ah prayer. So at noon, prior to the entrance of the Dhuhr time or the Jumu'ah time for prayer, you perform the ghusl, the full bath. And that would fulfill that particular requirement. Now, if you're looking at where you're going to attend Jumu'ah, you should also be considering the fact that there may, in our times, that there's multiple masajid. When there's multiple masajid and you have a choice between two, if they're in the same distance from your home, from your residence, so say for instance you have two masjids and one is a few miles away, and then you have another masjid and it's a few miles away, which one do you choose from? The scholars have said more than one thing about this. One is that you can take the masjid that has more people in it, and the people with the most taqwa. So you have this where you may have a smaller group, say 50 people, but all of the people are known for having high taqwa, and then you have maybe 70 people in another masjid, but not many people with taqwa, then you can choose the former in this case, because you want to be in the ranks with people of good taqwa. You don't hear this talked about as much, but it's mentioned in the text. So this is something to think about is when you enter a masjid. Now, obviously, if there is one masjid, you live in one city, and there's, say, 5 masjids, and there's, in one city, like a large city like Los Angeles, you're considered, the Jumu'ah is considered sound if you go to the one that is closest to you. But if you go to one that's a little further, because of these descriptions that has been given, such as taqwa and the number of people, then that will be sound. Then you got to also consider some of the other variables, such as the place in which the masjid is at, meaning that it's owned by Muslims, that the building, that the structure is owned by Muslims, and that when you perform the prayer there, this is known, that you're praying in a place that is that the property, or that the sacred house is of the property of the Muslims. So that's something else. So these are things to think about in fulfilling our obligation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jumu'ah is serious. And it's a serious obligation that we have to fulfill, just like we fulfill our 5 daily prayers. So a lot of times we don't consider these things when we perform in Jumu'ah. It's okay to visit multiple masajids, do these different things. But once you figure out this is the masjid I need to attend, and then it's within your locale, and the most important thing is that if you live in one city, that you should attempt to attend the masjid of that city. Now, if it's, like I said, multiple masjids in that one city, then you try to figure out the best masjid for you that'll help and benefit you, inshallah. That's one thing. Next to think about is, once you prepare to go, what is the dress? It's recommended that you wear your best clothes on Jumu'ah, that you wear cologne or oud or whatever, the oils that smell refreshed and clean before you go, and you wear white clothes. There's blessings and barakat in wearing white, all white, if you can wear all white. If not, alhamdulillah, clean garment, nice garment for Jumu'ah. We get dressed up to go to, dinner and, these non-religious activities. Why don't we go before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our best dress? We come in any kind of way to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should think about, how do we dress? How do we prepare when we go to the masjid? We should wear our best. Once we get there, there's some things there that, in order for the Jumu'ah to be considered valid, to be sound, we as individuals have to fulfill some requirements. And one of those requirements for us to fulfill on that day is that we have wudu. So, as I mentioned about ghusl, when you perform ghusl, if you recall, I said that it was sunnah mu'akhada. So if you fulfill the sunnah mu'akhada, it doesn't mean that you fulfilled the fard of performance of the prayer itself, because the prayer itself we know is fard. Therefore, the wudu has to be fard. So after performing the ghusl, for the Maliki fiqh in particularly, after fulfilling that, I don't know exactly the rule for Hanafis and Shafi'i, but after fulfilling the ghusl, you still have to perform the wudu for the fard, the fard wudu, before the actual performance of the salah. And you enter into the masjid, with your right foot first, as the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when you enter with your right foot, with the intentions to perform the Jumu'ah, but before proceeding to the Jumu'ah prayer, and before that is conducted by the khatib, that you offer your 2 rak'ats. So you salute the masjid, and you pray the 2 rak'ats, and you sit. And preferably, today is quite interesting and strange, the Muslims, that we flee to the back of the masjid. We actually flee to the back of the masjid. The sunnah is actually to get to the first row. In fact, there's hadith where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam talked about the person that actually rush, they vied, the Muslims, the Sahaba actually vied to get to the front row of the prayer, to the front row. Today, in the masajid today, people are running from the front row. You don't see the people in the front row. And I know some of the reasons that they try to preserve space for the elders. Alhamdulillah, they preserve some space for the elders on the front and for the people that are hufaz or that have memorization of the Quran, so that if the imam makes a mistake, that they're close enough to correct them. Alhamdulillah. The key in understanding this is in the wisdom of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Regardless, you should be trying to get to the first row. So we have multiple rows in the front, the first row, the second row, and the third row that are actually not being filled. And you have the Muslims are hanging out on the back walls and fleeing to the back when they should actually be fleeing to the front. So that's just something, in fact, it should be the opposite. You should see a space and gaps and open space in the back and not in the front. Now, this is something I wanted to point out. Now, once the imam takes the minbar to perform the Jumu'ah prayer, everything must cease and desist. Now, for the one that is already engaged in performing the 2 rak'ats of saluting the masjid, he can complete those and then sit. Now, for the person, and I'm talking about Maliki Fiqh, if a person actually enters the masjid and the imam has already ascended the minbar, then the worshiper that comes in should just sit. He should just sit. He shouldn't actually get up. Now, according to other schools, like the Shafi'i school, I believe, you should still come in and offer the 2 rak'ats, even if the imam is on the minbar, as long as he performs the 2 rak'ats before the imam begins the salah of Jumu'ah. So that's important. But again, if you follow Maliki Fiqh, if the imam has already ascended the minbar, you should enter and take a seat. And the wisdom behind that is that because a part of the rules and obligations of Jumu'ah is that you're listening to the khatib. So from the time that the khatib ascends the minbar and begin the tasbih upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he praises Allah and just bestows peace and blessings upon Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you should be listening. The worshiper should be listening by that time. So by him listening, he is fulfilling the obligation of Jumu'ah. So that's very important to understand. So you take your seat and you should not be distracted. In fact, when someone comes into the prayer late, and we're talking about the khatib is a part of the prayer. That is a part of the prayer. The khutbah is a part of it. When someone comes in, and you see in today's time that many people may come in and they still give salams, even though the Jumu'ah has started. Once the Jumu'ah started, you should be silent and you should not be talking. Once you enter, you just take your seat and fill the space where you have space. And that should be it. And once you fulfill that obligation, you're able to follow along in the place, wherever you miss, you just listen and not distract others. So the key when you enter late is not to distract others. So whether it's touching, trying to offer greetings, any of these things, it should not be happening during the Jumu'ah prayer. You should be actually listening. Now, the question comes up today, should children be allowed in the Jumu'ah prayer? We know that the times that we're in, the circumstances are difficult sometimes. We have, mothers, parents, obviously, there's not obligation for them, but for the men that bring their children, their young sons or daughters to Jumu'ah with them, because they want them to feel the relationship at an early age with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by observing these very essential practices of the Muslims. But one of the rules about this is that the child that you bring to Jumu'ah should have enough, be sensible enough and aware enough and intelligent enough to where they can actually pay attention and not distract. Even if they're not totally paying attention and understanding what the Imam is stating from the minbar, the child should at least not be distracting others. So if you do decide that you're going to bring your children to Jumu'ah, either if your wife is with you, they should remain with the women, since it's not an obligation for them anyway, and it doesn't lose the obligation as the men does. And then they should attend the Jumu'ah prayer, the men. Today, you see a lot of children in Jumu'ah, and they're standing in the prayer, they're standing in the ranks, and they're distracting others. They're running between the Muslims' legs. You know, they're bumping in. You know, there's a lot of things happening, and this shouldn't be happening, because Jumu'ah, you should be attentive to the khutbah. You should be attentive during the prayer, the commission of the actual prayer, the 2 rak'ahs. So these are the key things that should be happening, and there shouldn't be shouting and things of this nature happening. You know, many of the Muslims that, you know, come into Islam, they come from different backgrounds and different traditions, and they're used to this type of atmosphere in a worship environment. However, in Islam, we should not be making noise, having conversations. We shouldn't be whispering and all of these different things. Whatever needs to be stated should be stated from the minbar. It's the responsibility of the Imam, even if he has to tell someone to be quiet, or even if he has to tell someone, hey, you know, get closer and the rows scoot up. That's the responsibility of the Imam, not the person standing at the door, you know, collecting shoes and lining up shoes and escorting people. All of these different things is not from the religion. This is not a part of Islam. We have to understand that to fulfill the obligations so that your Jumu'ah is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have to follow the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And without following that, we are rendering our Jumu'ah invalid. We're rendering it invalid. So all of these things should not be going on, because speaking during Jumu'ah invalidates the prayer. You should not be speaking during Jumu'ah. You should not be speaking during the time that the khutbah is being done by the Imam, and you should not be speaking, obviously, during the prayer itself. So these are very key things that we should understand about the Jumu'ah prayer at minimum. There's other things that we can discuss, but I just wanted to share that with you today, and maybe we can pick it up. If you have questions, you know, reach out to us. You know, we have a Facebook page. We have a YouTube channel. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. We have a Twitter. And just, you know, you can send us an email at support@everydayislam.org. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.